star World Cup. Let's give another round of applause to Kevin O'Leary. I'd like to start off with, well, everybody here, I think, well, most people have seen you on Shark Tank, and they know you're into investments. But I want to start with, how did you become an investor? What got you into the investment space?
You know, what happens, I think, in your transition from being an operator to an investor is you go through the experience of trying to determine you have the executional skills to operate a business. And then if you're successful, you take that knowledge, more importantly, what the mistakes you made, and try and help others that you invest in avoid those mistakes. That makes you a more successful investor. So that transition occurred after, a few liquidity events. And like everybody else, I retired for a year and I got bored out of my mind. I've seen every beach in the world, and it's boring. And I wanted to get back in the game, and I came back in private equity and venture, and I worked for some of the larger firms for a while, and I said, I can do this myself, and I found my own firm. And that's generally the transitional path. And Shark Tank came along, which, believe me, nobody thought this would happen. We're going to learn a little bit about Shark Tank today, because the secret sauce of Shark Tank is customer acquisition. You'll see on tonight's show a product that's going to air. We'll sell $2 or $3 million worth of it in 1 hour. We will not pay anything for customer acquisition. And my job as an investor is to take advantage of this massive social media platform. And when I invest in companies, and I don't want this to come off as arrogant, but it's a fact, I'm not like another investor. Most investors come from private equity or venture firms. They're great people. They have zero ability to acquire customers. All they can do is pay for them. My strategy is, how can I tell your company's story and help you acquire customers at a significantly lower cost? That's the model of what I do.
Great. Well, as you mentioned, you are different from a lot of investors out here, and we do have a lot of entrepreneurs here as well. So I want to focus a little bit on the entrepreneur side.
Yeah.
You've heard thousands and thousands of pitches by now. What makes a winning pitch, in your opinion? How is that different from other pitches that don't get the funding?
Yeah. There's 3 attributes. And the reason I have this data is the show Shark Tank is on in 42 countries. Some is the generic American tape with voiceover to the language of that geography, and others is new productions like Canada and England and Australia, New Zealand, Brazil and Mexico, where it's called Lion's Den in Germany and Dragon's Den in Australia, whatever. It's the same idea. And it doesn't matter what geography, what language, the entrepreneurial adventure is the same. So there was a little research done about 4 years ago that took the unedited tape from all of the pitches that actually got funded, did not determine the outcome of the business. They weren't looking for that. They were trying to figure out, in the period that you were engaging with the investor, what were common attributes that achieved success? So it turns out, not in just some of the cases, 100% of the cases, 3 attributes existed. Here they are. If it's the only thing you guys remember from this, this is it. So you should write these down. They'll serve you well in the future. And I consider these attributes the definition of leadership in any sector, because I don't care if you're a preacher, a politician, an entrepreneur, a mother, a father. No one follows you if you don't know where you're going. So here are the 3 issues. Number 1, can you articulate the opportunity in 90 seconds or less? The whole idea of presenting an opportunity is to define it very quickly. What is it that you have that could be such a great opportunity? What idea is it? But if you can't explain it, and most of the great pitches you can explain in 30 seconds. Here's what I do. This is why I'm here. This is my product. This is my service. So you only get 90 seconds for that. Now this is very important. Great ideas, this is number 2. Great ideas are a dime a dozen. What's really rare are executional skills. So now you have the ear of the investor. You could be in a VC pitch, you could be in an elevator, you could be on Shark Tank carpet, whatever. Okay, I like the idea. Why can you make it happen? What is it about you and your team that can execute on this? Do you know the sector? Have you done this before? Have you worked for a competitor? Have you failed 3 times and figured out the mistakes you made? I personally would rather invest in an entrepreneur that's failed and felt the sting of failure and is highly motivated to get out there and fix what they did wrong because they've learned from it. But that doesn't matter. What matters is to tie your executional skills to the idea so that all of a sudden you're mitigating risk for the investor. Great idea, great team, and I can feel the change in a room in the context of Shark Tank. You can start to see all these sharks starting to say, hey, what do we got here? Yeah. And because you have to have executional skills. But there's one more, and this one's the killer. I've seen this happen so many times. So let's put it back in the context of Shark Tank. You've beat out 100,000 applications to be one of 240 companies it tapes. And you're there, you have your moment, you got the first one right. Everybody loves your idea. You got the second one right, you convinced everybody that you're the right person to execute. And then this happens. You have to know your numbers. How big is the market? How fast is it growing? What's the gross margins? What's the break-even analysis? How many competitors do you have? You have to have those right on the tip of your tongue because that is the glue that binds. If you get onto Shark Tank carpet and you've got everybody else in your deal and you don't know your numbers, you deserve to burn in hell in perpetuity, and I will personally put you there. And I've done it many times. You have to know your numbers. It's the language of business. You get those 3 right, the probability of a deal goes up geometrically higher. And it's in every single successful pitch. You can go back in time, go and look at Shark Tank episodes. You will see all 3 of those attributes every time someone gets funded.
Are there any pitches or companies that you funded that only have 2 of those components, not all 3?
Never.
Wow.
Never.
So
Never.
Startups in the room presenting today, again, remember these 3 points.
Yeah. You gotta know your numbers. If you don't know your numbers, bring someone who does. Get a bean counter. Get somebody that can explain the business model. Because you've already achieved success by mitigating the risk and saying, look, I can execute on this plan. That's what matters.
Now, there's a lot of these points that have been mentioned. You asked about customer acquisition costs, what are the numbers, the market size, etc. But when you're looking at Shark Tank and we're watching these episodes are so short. These are only a few minutes. They come in, pitch, and then you get the deal or you don't get the deal.
Yeah.
So what's really going on in the background? Is there anything else that maybe the audience isn't seeing? Maybe is there someone else doing some part of the due diligence for you? Is there anything that might be helpful for the audience to know?
An average Shark Tank pitch can be 50 minutes. Some of them go for an hour and a half. And particularly ones where you've really got a hot deal going. There's a lot of competition. Then it gets edited down to 7 minutes and 50 seconds. The live show last Friday was the first time we tried it live, and they only had 7 minutes and 50 seconds to pitch. And so that was chaos, but a lot of fun. Some people liked it, some didn't, but they're still talking about it, and that's all you care about on TV. It was a reverse, and we as investors had to make up our minds very, very quickly. And so, but the truth is about entrepreneurs, you have to pitch a lot of people, and you have to have a clean deck. And let me give you a little information about a deck. Never make it more than 12 pages. Never. Nobody reads more than 12 pages. If you want support backup stuff, when I get a deck with 38 slides, right into the garbage. I'm not going to. That means you don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to pitch. You're already a loser. And so, not interested. It has to be really, really tight. And then in the diligence, the backup data. Have a data room online that the analysts will look at. But when you're pitching the principal of a VC firm, don't do a 38-page deck. I've seen this mistake so many times. You'll never get funded.
Yeah. We as a VC also see many pitch decks as well, and definitely agree that you want to be able to put the material in a concise way to relay the message. I'm going along the first point that you mentioned there. So, bring it back to the Shark Tank a little bit. You are my favorite shark, by the way.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to start it off.
What else are you going to say while I'm here?
Well, I am still going to say it that way. And I do want to make sure that you get good deals and then fund the right companies and make a lot of money. I know that's your favorite thing. But one of my favorite moments actually on Shark Tank is when you discuss the deals, negotiate with the companies, and it goes south. And then you tell them your iconic line, "You're dead to me." Yeah. So for the entrepreneurs here in the room, how should they be approaching the negotiation with the investors? How do they know that it's a fair deal for both parties? And maybe it doesn't have to be, but it would be great if it can be. And how do the entrepreneurs also know that the investor is perhaps the right fit for them? Because as you mentioned, investors can do a lot of different things for them.
Yeah, and there's many sources of capital now, and the one that's growing the fastest right now is equity crowdfunding. That came out of nowhere with the Jobs Act just 4 years ago, and now the SEC has allowed the minimum to be, or the maximum to go from 1,070,000 to 5 million on the A round. So there's a mountain of deals doing that, and not to shout out for one of my investments, but I own a piece of Start Engine, the largest in the US, and I'm a paid spokesperson for them. We fund, what I do is I do a Shark Tank deal and take it right on the Start Engine. Because the difference between the traditional VC, private equity hedge, or high net worth private office is they all demand preference shares. They always want a different status. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Very well, yes.
You're part of the problem.
We're the problem, but we can't lose it.
No, but the point is, the equity crowdfunding can work hand in hand with venture. And the reason you would do it is, with equity crowdfunding, you go to your customer base, they become shareholders. They don't have a time limit. So they're straight common, there's no preference, they're your advocates already, they're your customers, and they tend to stay loyal for a really, really long time. So we do both. We do venture financing, and we pair it with equity crowdfunding. I've done multiple deals on both platforms. And the VCs are starting to understand the value of doing that, because in the end, the only thing the investor cares about in today's market is one metric: customer acquisition cost. If you don't know what that is, and you don't know how to manage it, you will never get funded. Because the way I like to invest is, you show me your model. You show me that you figured out customer acquisition cost. If it's a subscription, you show me your attrition and your customer acquisition cost, so I understand the model. Then if you're trying to do around $5 or $10 million, I know I'm just pouring gasoline on an already operating model. And so if I fund at whatever, let's say, a $20 or $30 million valuation, in 18 months, if my premise is right, I can fund at 100 because I've shown geometric growth by pouring gasoline on the customer acquisition model. And that's what's different now than pre-pandemic. You have to know CAC. You have to know that. And you have to have all the data to support it. If you don't even know what that is, don't even ever call me up. I'm not even interested in talking to you.
You have some of your strict criteria that you're looking for in each investment, it seems. But has that always been the case, or has the Shark Tank investment experience changed how you look at investments?
No, it's changed over the last 36 months as a result of the digitization during the pandemic to direct-to-consumer models. Most consumer goods and services, and this applies to B2B and enterprise as well, is customer acquisition direct. In other words, if you can find a way to acquire a customer and then sell them direct, you can have up to 82% gross margin, because your only costs are customer acquisition costs, shipping costs, obviously, and manufacturing costs. You don't have to pay 2 or 3 tiers of distribution. And so, if you look at what's occurred, even Nike, during the pandemic, they said it would take them 6 years to get to 50% direct to consumer. They're now past 50%. They did it in 5 months. So all of the S&P companies now have started to figure out that the new model, in the case of Nike, it got reflected in the price of Foot Locker. They got slaughtered because now Nike doesn't need retail anywhere in the world as much as they did pre-pandemic. So direct-to-consumer models and ideal companies, for me, are ones that have 25% of revenue direct-to-consumer on their own platform, where they're gathering consumer data. So preference, size, style in the context of consumer goods or services. Or B2B, it's the same thing. 25% if it's consumer goods on Amazon, because it's really hard. But tonight's product you're going to see, most of the orders will come on Amazon. But we also have our own website. And then, if you're successful in understanding how to do retail, 50% in retail, but your margins there, you're going to have to pay 30 to 40% margins to the retailer. So that's a successful company managing all the distribution channels. And the reason you would even do retail is to just keep the knockoffs away from the shelf. Because if you're successful on any product that's a consumer product, you'll be knocked off within usually a month of passing 5 million in sales. And so even though you can litigate and all that, it doesn't matter. You can generally get it taken down on Amazon if you have the IP, but you can't take it down on Alibaba. They don't give a shit. So that's just the way the world is. And so you'll be knocked off internationally right away.
Well, continuing on the topic of investments, I want to kind of personally ask you, so are there investments that, now looking back, that you wish you had made, or maybe even some of the current or past portfolio companies that you're now thinking, well, I shouldn't have done that investment? And could you tell us a little bit of stories on those two companies?
Yeah. Traditional, first of all, the question is there investments I wish I'd made? I mean, I can't go back and change them, so I don't really cry over spilled milk. There's one deal in particular that's legendary in Shark Tank. It's Ring. It got sold. It's Jamie's company. We're good friends now. We hosted dinner on Nantucket every July 5th together. But he owes me $200 million. So, it's sort of that deal, if you recall, he wanted $600,000. Nobody wanted to give him anything. I offered it to him in venture debt. So it would be debt. So I'd have a preference in return for capital. It's a very hardware-intensive deal. He sold it to Amazon for $1.2 billion. So he did okay with that one. We're still doing stuff together. But I think at the end of the day, here's what I would caution everybody on venture investing and what I found to be true. Because at any one time, we're extraordinary. We have over 50 companies in the portfolio. Because generally Shark Tank, you're doing 17 deals a year, 17 to 20, closing on 12 to 15 of them after diligence. And every time I make the assumption that that's going to be my hot line for the year. And generally in VCs, since the 50s, when it started in Boston, the model looks like this. You do 10 deals, you get 2 monster winners, just home runs, within 7 years. You basically get a middle bar full of zombie companies that just struggle and don't do anything, and you get 2 pieces of crap that die right away. So you think about that, 6 zombies, 2 dogs, 2 monster winners that pay for all your mistakes.
Right.
Shark Tank's a little different because we can take a mediocre operating company and get its customer acquisition cost to 0. Because, maybe you get 3 or 4 or 5 million people seeing the live episode, but you get 100 million more eyeballs in syndication. So that you're constantly out there with free customer acquisition. And the Shark Tank companies over the decades have really figured out how to do this. You need to get a deal so that you can get the updates, so that the companies get updated, and every shark has an equal number of updates. And so you're reminding them of that. And that goes into syndication too. So everybody knows how to play that game. And it's a remarkable platform. So instead of only 2 hits, generally sharks get 4 monsters out of 10. And it's because they've removed the cost of customer acquisition, which, by the way, since Apple changed its privacy policies, the yield on digital advertising has collapsed. In some cases, 45%. So now customer acquisition really matters in a way that it didn't before. A lot of these companies, if you haven't figured out your customer acquisition costs over 3 years, you're just going out of business. You're advertising yourself out of business.
You also emphasize to many entrepreneurs about the importance of cash flow. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Everybody makes assumptions. I've never seen a spreadsheet that didn't go up to the right. I've never seen anybody forecast a bad outcome. I never even look at those. It's such worthless information because they have no idea. And so the whole idea is to start testing customer acquisition, start testing price points, start testing model to find a break even somewhere that you can tweak into positive cash flow. Most companies lose money for the first 2 years. And then if you can't figure out a way to profit in the third, your funding starts to dry up. And so I always call it after 3 years just a hobby. It never was a business. And you should take it out behind the barn and shoot it because you're wasting your time. And you should do something else. But once you get to a break even, you can start to tweak to get to positive cash flow. Most companies in consumer goods and services, when the model's figured out, they can do 15%, 15 to 17.5% pre-tax free cash. And that is a sustainable business. And today, because capital costs are going up every week as the Fed raises rates, there's no free money anymore. And so funding has really dried up, and valuations are getting crushed, and down rounds are 60 to 80% from the euphoric periods. And you know, I'm tiptoeing through the tulips, looking at deals now, and I don't care what your last round is at. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. And so there's a lot of misery, pain, and grown men weeping.
Well, I'm sure we can be talking for hours on the topic of investment entrepreneurship, if that's kind of time for us, but I know you wanted to make one announcement for the audience here.
Yes, and this is for, a lot of people have approached me since I've gotten here in the last hour and a half. I became an Emirati citizen last year. I'm very proud of that. It's a remarkable country, very successful and 50 years old, but very enlightening in terms of investing. And my job is to help deploy capital from there. So we have a new fund, it's called Cypher, it's Web3 only. Our largest investors are from the United Arab Emirates, and I'm the chairman of it. I am looking for Web3 deals. Not Web2 being converted to Web3, I mean nascent Web3 ideas. And I have $250,000 to start with, I'm ready to fund, I'm looking for deals, and I'm going to give you the CEO's email address. It's simply paul@o'learyventures.com. Send me your decks. We are open for business. We have been funding now. We just did another deal with Evan Chung, who left Facebook. Miston was his deal. FTX put $100 million in. We're right behind them. I am very interested in Web3. I want to spend a lot of money very quickly. So I'm open for business. Send me your stuff.
Well, perfect. That was it. Thank you very much, Kevin Laurie.
Thank you so much, Kevin O'Leary, for sharing your incredible wisdom with us, welcoming honest citizens to the stage. We have some open star appreciation. Who here learned something really valuable that they're going to implement in their business? Anyone? Anyone? Woo! Can we give another round of applause for Kevin O'Leary?
Over my shoulder like in a wedding. Big in the wedding.
Thank you so much. Please give another round of